Hello, everybody. I will just give a couple of moments for people to join before I welcome everybody to today's Nora RetailUP live webinar series. So if you are online already, if you could just pop your name and where you're from in the chat box so everybody knows who's here today, that would be great. And I think we are probably ready. I'll give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I think we're good to go. So I would just like to welcome everybody formally to Nora's RetailUP live series today. Today's session is about unlocking 360-degree data visibility, a breakthrough in customer data and influence. I'm Olivia Carr, founder of Silk, and today I am going to be the host of this webinar. Just some very quick housekeeping. It's going to run for about 45 minutes. Our four panelists are going to be answering some questions today. There are a couple of exciting things for me to announce. During today's webinar, we are going to have 5 $30 Uber vouchers available for anyone that asks some questions in the chat box. 5 people will be selected at random to be the winners of the food vouchers. And at the very end of the webinar, in the last 5 minutes, we're going to be putting on the screen a very short poll. Anyone who does kindly answer those 4 questions in the poll will also be winning a Uber Eats food voucher, which is super generous. So I will give you a reminder at the end of that for anyone who wasn't online at the very beginning of this webinar, but I can see that we've got people joining now. So please use that chat screen to say who you are and where you're from. We are welcoming questions, as I said, incentivising with some Uber Eats vouchers there today. So we would really encourage you to put your questions in the chat box. During this webinar, if the question is relevant to the question, we might answer it there and then. Otherwise, we will get back to the questions at the end. And now let me introduce our 4 panelists for today's session, starting with Shane Lenton, who is the CIO of Q and has the wish list there, which maybe we can hear about when Shane introduces himself. And we also have Justin Theng, who's the Executive Advisor, Customer Analytics for SaaS. We have Cho Kim, who's the GM for Global Retail Vertical for Intel. And we have Regan Yan, who's the CEO of Digital Alchemy. So I am going to welcome everybody first. I'm going to ask Shane to do a very quick introduction, and then I'll move on to Justin.
Thanks, Olivia. Great to be here today. So I wear quite a few hats. Today, it's CIO and CDO at Q Clothing. I have a retail and technology consulting business, Unified Commerce, and recently co-founded a multi-channel wishlist platform, which is very relevant for today's discussion. So yeah, looking forward to the chat.
Next up, we have Justin.
Hi everyone, I am from SaaS. I spend most of my time speaking with CMOs and CTOs on removing impersonal marketing. We do that through data and analytics and machine learning.
Very relevant for today's discussion. Next up, we have Cho Kim from Intel.
Yes, I'm from Intel. I run the Global Retail Vertical Business Unit. So Intel, we are not, selling software or signage POS system. Our job is to really kind of lead digital transformation by enabling our ecosystem partner to solve market problems and customer issues that we could actually work together to address, and then come up with a solution with our partners for retail industry. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Regan, CEO of Digital Alchemy.
Hi, I'm Regan. Digital Alchemy is a marketing services company. We focus mainly on marketing automation and operations, and increasingly that includes the operationalization of AI technology and AI decisioning engines.
Amazing. Okay, so just a quick reminder, if you have questions as we start off with our panel discussion today, please drop them in the chat box. We will get to them if they're relevant, or we will come back to them at the end. And for those that have joined that didn't hear, we are choosing 5 people at random today who ask questions to win a $30 Uber Eats voucher. Great incentive, good timing for a work lunch. And we will be giving away some Uber Eats vouchers at the very end today for anybody who completes the poll. So stay tuned for that. But let's get straight into it. So I'm going to start with you, Justin. The first question is how data intelligence and dynamic decisioning has impacted your business.
Yeah, so SaaS is, we are vendors in the space. So I guess I can answer this question based on how we've been helping our customers deal with this. So for those of you who don't know SaaS, we have a pedigree of about 40 years in data and analytics. More recently, our founder, Dr. Jim Goodnight, invested $1 billion with a capital B into predictive analytics. So really what we've been doing in this, if I could call it a season, we've been looking at how to bring predictability into very unpredictable scenarios. In 3 key areas: predicting what's going to increase customer lifetime value, predicting what a customer would want next best actions, and then predicting the best paths to purchase and optimizing those.
Perfect. And then maybe now we will go over to Shane. And if you could tell us how data intelligence and dynamic decisioning has impacted the businesses that you're involved in, or Q.
Yeah, look, from a Q perspective, it's super critical, particularly when we talk about engaging with our customers, and first-party data is obviously a really, a hot topic at the moment for many reasons, and really the opportunities that it derives from customer interactions both in-store and online. It is sort of underpins a lot of the automation that we run at Q. So whether that's someone's behavior when they're on the website or how they're interacting, with marketing communication, whether that be email or otherwise, how they're interacting in store. So we've recently launched with the Wishlist company a multi-channel wishlist. So it's really about understanding what customers are doing in store. If they're not quite ready to buy, our staff will add those items to their wish list. It's the same wish list they use online. So if a customer adds an item from any of our websites, it's the one wish list. And then off the back of that, it's about creating opportunities and using that data to remarket, retarget in a personalized manner. So something as simple as after a store visit, letting the customer know that, thanks for visiting Jenny today at QVB. Here are some items that were added to your wish list today. It also gives the staff an opportunity to recommend product above and beyond that. And then we use that data and insights, across various different things from, social media ads to letting customers know if an item in their wish list is almost sold out, they'll receive a notification. If an item is on sale. Previously, we do segmentation around customers' interest to a degree, whether they were a sale customer or a full price customer. We do a little bit of segmentation, but now it's the ability to actually inform customers about products that they're interested in, not just online, but also in store. So that's been really good for us. And then using that data and all the other customer behavioral data we have with machine learning and AI, we're recommending products throughout the site. There's dedicated emails that go out. There used to be a real fear in the business around how can we create content when we've got a business at Q that drops 30 plus new styles every week. There's only so much editorial content that you can really produce. And the business has really got themselves in a position where they're quite comfortable for the machine learning and AI to do its bit. And then we're using those same recommendations through video commerce now with in-store bookings. So our customers connect via an appointment to our stylists in store remotely. We use the recommendations there. We also push them out to shipping notifications in Ship It. So it's really the ability to use that first party data and that data insights and get those foundations in place. And then we're using that data across, majority, if not all, touch points.
Thank you, Shane. It sounds super interesting. Next up, I will go over to Chiol.
Yeah, from Intel perspective, right? Well, data is really, really critical, right? Going forward. And someone said, hey, data is next generation's oil, right? But for oil, you need to refine to help drivers or someone to be able to use a car properly. I mean, just in particular case, right? But the data you need to also refine. How would you do that? Hey, you need to actually kind of have a lot of intelligence in it. You need to really, really make sure that the computing platform in place for both cloud and edge, so that real-time data is always kind of crunched and processed and analyzed. And that's kind of how we kind of measure our success in terms of the built-in architecture for retail industry nowadays at Intel. And then, but as a trusted advisor with Intel, right? And then we actually kind of making sure that make sure that we engage with ecosystem partner that has like CDPs and other software to make sure that they are feeling comfortable to be able to help their customer to predict the demand and then maximize shopping experience, personal experience, so that the end customers will be able to increase their value prop, right? So that they can also increase both top line and bottom line growth.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Regan.
I think from my perspective, I think there's two key outcomes. One is efficiency. So dynamic decisioning allows you to automate a whole bunch of things that we used to have to do manually, rules that we used to have to create about when we wanted to contact a customer or what offer we wanted to make for them. So now we can build AI engines to automate that process. So you need less people to run more targeted marketing. 4 or 5 years ago, the more targeted your marketing, the more time and the more people you needed. So there's a real efficiency in the process that's brought by dynamic decisioning. I think the second thing that the key benefit that we get from dynamic decisioning is the ability to shorten the time frame between when we run the model and when we make the decision and when we actually talk to the customer. So as that time frame gets shorter and shorter, the performance of our models improves, because the shorter the time frame that you're trying to predict a customer behavior, the more accurate you're going to be. If you're going to try to predict what somebody's going to do in 2 weeks from today, there's an accuracy associated with that. But if you do that same decision about whether that person's going to do that tomorrow, then your decision will be a lot more accurate. So by scoring more often and getting as close to real time as you can really improve the performance of models by just reducing the time frame between score and execution.
Thank you very much. I think before we move on to the next question, we might just address this question now, Shane, from Joe Shaw. Not sure where Joe is from. I think Kraft Heinz, head of e-commerce. I'm not sure if that's you, Joe. But the question here is, can you tell us a bit more about how you go about automating content generation? Are you able to generate product images in this way?
And thanks for saving me. I was trying to type a response there. A lot easier to talk. Look, so less about creating the image itself dynamically, more about having predefined templates and utilizing the machine learning and AI to recommend product and to be built around that. So what it means is the team's not constantly having to work through editorial content. It's using existing images that exist, from an e-commerce perspective and repurposing that. And really, I suppose when we look at all these things and utilization of these images, it's about providing the right products and the right categories that are with an element of hyper personalization for that customer, but less about generating the actual images themselves. But the really big shift at Q was if it wasn't too long ago where the business was so focused on every single product on a site had to sit adjacent to a similar product and I'm talking within dresses, like there was the level of merchandising, rightly so from a fashion perspective, but then the progress the business has made in trusting the technology and letting the technology decide what images sit next to each other, and using, you know, at the end of the day, a human can't provide personalization for, you know, 500,000 customers. It's just not possible. And previously, there's an element of future direction and that editorial piece that I talk about, but really letting go a bit and using those recommendations and automation to let the platforms do what they do and do what they do well. But as I say, we're not creating the images per se. But an important fact that I'll mention there is, with recommendations and machine learning, in most cases, platforms they need some behavioral data, and they need some, with the interaction with a particular product. Let's say you release 30 dresses on a Monday. Generally speaking, the products that are getting recommended to customers, when you've got a catalogue of 1,000 products at any given time in a category, just as an example, it's more the products that have greater interactions, and therefore the day zero, often platforms miss the opportunity. And that's where AI and machine learning comes in, where some of the more sophisticated recommendation engines are actually scanning the image of a dress as an example, and they're looking for similar patterns, similar colors, and they're using that insight and data to create day zero recommendations. And that's something certainly on the horizon, and something that's on our list to do a queue. But yeah, I suppose that's just a bit of an explanation how images come into play, but ultimately, yeah, we're not generating those images.
Thank you. And to the next point here, what has data revealed, or what specific breakthrough moment or aha moment have you had? And I might start with Chiol.
Sorry, I was kind of speaking on the mute. To me, so like I said, we enable our partner to be able to solve the market problem by technology. So one of end users, which is a retailer, that had a problem with the marketing campaign. So this guy, CMO, so he's really, really aggressive to come up with the promotion, and then promoting some specific product, right? Working with some certain brands, right? And then, hey, he's really kind of expecting a lot of sales growth over the next couple of months. But what happened is, hey, a couple of months later, that item that CMO was really, really kind of promoting is not on the shelf. What happened? So, and then after that the company had a strategy and replanning to make sure that, hey, CMO work closely with the COO and then CIO to make sure the campaign engine and supply chain prediction and predictive maintenance, software should be co-aligned, coexist, so that, hey, you promote, and then, hey, product that you promote is still on the shelf, right? And then the company kind of started growing like hockey stick. And then they really kind of appreciated the fact that they invested a lot of money in CDP, and also transform their supply chain system. So that was really kind of aha moment. Hey, data really matters, and the real-time data really matters, so that, hey, supply chain system can be always kind of updated in the right manner. So
perfect. Regan, have you got something to add to this one?
Sure. I think, we had a retailer, and it wasn't an online retailer per se. It was primarily an offline retailer. And we had an AI engine that was taking their catalog and scoring, every product in their catalog against every customer, and we were creating, communication to get people into store based on the products in their fortnightly catalog that that was most relevant to that customer. But what we found was that there was you have to really focus on what do you want the customer to do. And in this case, when you send somebody an email for an offline retailer, you want them to go in store. And going in store actually requires a level of work from the customer. And what we found was that there's certain products within a range and certain types of offers or discount levels within a range that will get a customer to go in store. So, if you've got Coca-Cola that is on sale for, and it's 10 cents a can off, that's not going to drive somebody in store. But if you've got nappies that are, 40% off because it's a $30, $40 purchase, that will actually drive customers in store. So we began to understand that it's not just about scoring all of the offers that you've got and all of the customers you've got. You've really got to think about, what do I want the customer to do? Do I want them to go in store? If this communication is about trying to get you in store, then there's certain types of products and certain types of offers that are good at driving that, and you need to pick the highest scoring product from within that range rather than just picking the highest scoring product generally. And so what we learned is that you can't often you can't just let an algorithm run wild. You have to really think about how you're going to use the data that comes out of the algorithm to drive the specific behavior that you want from that customer.
Great. And I might
maybe offer a build on that, if that's all right. Sorry, Olivia, were you going to go to somebody else, or are you okay for me?
I am here, ready to listen.
I can second what Regan says. We've had this conversation a lot between the two of us this past year. The thing, we often speak about the overlap of artificial intelligence, customer intelligence, and human intelligence. And what Regan was speaking about there was this behavioral science that's still very much a part of what we do. And, data isn't the death of creativity. We still need to have a level of curiosity and apply a human narrative. I really got excited by what Shane was saying, where Shane was talking about, the machine is looking at, we as a company, we were looking at human addresses, dots versus matching in fashion and all that kind of stuff. And over time, they let the machine kind of show more of what the machine thought was best to show. We at SAS have seen this with a customer of ours at the beginning of the pandemic. What happened was they were looking at their abandoned carts and retargeting their advertising based on what's in cart. Now that's par for course, right? These days, you show what's left in your cart, and typically you'd see maybe a 10% recovery rate. When we let the AI kind of do its thing, what it found was, for example, in this case, it was PlayStation games. What we found was that if you didn't retarget in ads with PlayStation games that were left in the cart, but instead retargeted with virtual reality goggles, you had a 30% recovery rate of cart, plus it was a higher ticket item. So then you look at that as a marketer or a human and you go, why did that work? Well, how come that happened? So that's where the narrative comes in. So my personal narrative is I believe that what was happening was that people were looking for escapism, not games. And they were like, oh, I don't know if PlayStation games are my thing. And then when they were shown the virtual reality headset, they went, revenge spend, go big or go home. This is what I'm going to get. So I really enjoy this discussion of data versus behavioral science.
Thank you. And you've got your hand up there, Shane, so I'll get you.
Yeah, just to add to both those points, and particularly back to what Regan was saying. So when we've just come out of MVP on the wishlist product, and the first few months of the product being in market at Q and Q using the product, amazingly, and it really was an aha moment or a bit of a mind-blown moment, was the fact that regardless of where the wish list was created. So that was whether it was a customer self-created online or whether it was a customer in store that wasn't quite ready to buy and the staff members added it to their wish list. We saw 45% of sales directly attributed to the wish list back in store. So this is a customer who has received communication in the wish list either as a base reminder or to say an item in their wish list is out of stock or on sale. And it's actually driven them back into store. But again, to Regan's point, what is the overall, what are you trying to achieve? Ultimately, firstly, the end goal is to get a sale, but it's more to that. If we were to put a shipping offer in any of those notifications, chances are it would have been a transaction and we would have influenced what channel they purchased on. But Q being a multi-channel retailer with, 100 or close to 200 stores across the brands now, the goal is, and particularly where you want stores to buy in and add items to the wish list. And I mean, Justin pointed on, abandoned cart and recovery rate at around 10%. Imagine what the opportunity is when you've got a retailer where 80% of the opportunities on the shop floor, and traditionally you don't have that abandoned cart type opportunity. So now, if a customer's not quite ready to buy, items are added, they're getting notified. But yeah, the exciting thing is that we haven't tried to skew which channel they purchase on. That may be, a follow-up campaign that it may make sense if they haven't gone into store in X amount of time that we give them a shipping offer. But really interesting, the desired outcome was to push them back into store. And amazingly, we've achieved that, which ultimately means we've got buy-in from the retail team and it ultimately means success. But I think it's critically important to understand at the forefront what you're trying to achieve. And it's often more than just getting the sale. It's driving more foot traffic into store if that's the objective, and then the opportunity to upsell, cross-sell off the back of that. So yeah, I think that's certainly been a few aha moments for me.
Perfect. And I'm conscious we do have a question there for Justin. I'm going to leave that one till the end, just conscious of getting through our questions first, but we're definitely going to come back to that one to MR who asked it. And reminder, there is a little note over there to post your questions. We really are encouraging interaction in today's discussion. We'd really love to hear your thoughts on any of the comments that the panelists are saying or anything else that isn't being covered. We really want you and encourage you to put it in the chat. So on to our next question. I will ask our four panelists, maybe use the raise hand feature if you know where that is down the bottom of the screen. There's a button there saying raise hand. If you've got something that you really want to add to this question, which is what is the advantage of a robust CDP solution? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Perfect.
I think, a CDP is like the foundations of a house. If you don't build a solid foundation to your house, then there's a good chance that your house is not going to last very long and it's going to warp and buckle and it's not going to look very good in 4 or 5 years' time. So the CDP is kind of the least sexy part of this whole process, right? Because you don't, a good CDP is something that works way in the background that you never see. But it is probably the most important piece of infrastructure in marketing automation that you need to build in order to automate. The great challenge of marketing automation isn't installing the platform. It's actually automating. And most of the marketing automation platforms that I see in market, whether they're SaaS or they're Adobe or whether they're Braze, are not automated. And it's not because of the platform, it's because they don't have a robust data supply chain. And that starts with a good CDP. And if it's not robust, if it doesn't have integrity, people who are building the campaigns, they don't trust it and they won't use all of the data in it. So people that are building the analytics have to, turn themselves into knots to make anything useful, and it becomes, really, really inefficient. So getting the CDP right is fundamental to being successful.
Thank you.
I can jump in there on that. I 100% agree with Regan in the sense, there's a few, and even before you get to CDP, there's a few foundations there. part of my day job is a business called Unified Commerce. And for those that sort of know a little bit about Unified Commerce, it's the next iteration on from omnichannel. And it really is about having a core platform that's really providing that source of truth just at a base level customers. So if a customer shops online, if they shop in store, when they're added to a transaction, when they sign in or sign up, it's about having that single source of truth for that customer across those retail touch points. Same goes for inventory, providing inventory visibility across each touch point. And then of course you need the automation from a fulfillment, or orchestration and automation from a fulfillment perspective to route that order to the right location. And then the next iteration is really, that CDP piece to drive the marketing automation. There's so many customer interactions and inputs. And by having a CDP where you are bringing all those interactions together, that really sets up the foundations for success. So hands down, it's about bringing everything together and not having multiple platforms off, executing things in duplication and all sorts of things. If you can bring it together and execute in a controlled and organized manner, there's not only we get greater outcomes from an ROI perspective, but you're also going to get better engagement, less people opting out, and ultimately a better result from a sales perspective.
Perfect. And Chiol?
Yeah, with the CDP, the robust CDP. So now the CMO is in spotlight for main character for digital transformation, right? And then one of the most important activities for CMO nowadays is really to define, understand the customer experience journey by different persona, right? And then you define the customer problem, it may be market problems, and then make the hypothesis, to solve the problem. And then you come up with some solution, and then or campaign, you test out or you validate those with the A/B test and whatever, and optimize the decision. The whole process is automated, right? And so this is really kind of powerful. The platform that the CMO nowadays need to really kind of enjoy. So again, just kind of automating customer experience journey with the robust CDP is really something that CMO would love.
Perfect. And Justin, I'm not sure if you want to add to that or yes?
Yeah, I think I think everyone has touched on, if you ask 40 people what a CDP is, you'll get 40 different answers. So like everyone else has said, I do tend to think it's best to focus on the outcomes. What do we want a CDP to actually achieve? For me, it's 3 C's. It's compliance. Number 1, we are coming into an era where data privacy, regulation, and rules are just part and parcel of what we do. It's not a box we have to tick anymore. It's part of the benefit that we offer to our customers. It's part of our competitive advantage. And that should cut, as Shane rightly pointed out, across both offline and online. So that's something that we at SaaS focus very heavily on. It's pointless to have a CDP that only focuses on online because in reality, we've got this hybrid marketing world or hybrid engagement world with our customers. So that's compliance. The second thing is courtesy. A lot of the times what we call automation is really being reactive. And I think that's the key differentiator between customer service and customer experience. Customer service is reactive. We have reacted to something the customer has asked for or a problem they've had, whereas customer experience is proactive. And to me, courtesy is about turning up at the right place at the right time. Just because we can be real time, and maybe we can talk about this later, but just because we can turn up real time doesn't mean we should blast in real time. We all saw what happened during the pandemic. Everyone went, send out the we're here for you messages, and we all got plastered with it. And the third is company effectiveness. So when you've got a CDP, you've got a single view of your customer, you've got an understanding of your customer. That helps your call centers, if you have them, train better. It reduces your bottom line. It improves your revenue. It also helps you understand where your assumptions are, which is actually one of the great pitfalls of automation, is you can lock customers into an automated journey. And if you don't really understand what's happening with your customers, you can lose them. But that's a deep topic. So I just wanted to touch on the 3 C's: compliance, courtesy, and company effectiveness.
Great input there. So now on to our 4th question. What are some of the major hurdles facing retail in the online space? And I think I'll start here with Regan.
Oh, thank you. I think the major hurdle that retailers face is fatigue, because as more and more retailers, move online, with increasing budgets and increasing enthusiasm, and all of the sleepy retailers that that tried to survive offline before the pandemic have suddenly realized that they can't anymore. So everybody's flooding online, and everybody has their view of a customer. So everybody says, well, I'm going to talk to my customer every second day. But when a customer starts signing up and starts buying from, not from 5 online retailers, but to, 10 or 20 online retailers on occasion, and each of them says, well, I'm going to talk to my customer every second day, the customer starts to get bombarded with information, because everybody's thinking about, well, I'm going to talk to my customer twice, every second day. So I think, that is going to be an increasing problem. And as email open rates and as click-through rates and interaction rates, fall, there's an overwhelming temptation to increase the number of messages that you send in order to compensate, for the declining interaction rate. And I think that is probably the most challenging thing that we face. How do we move up the food chain in customers wanting to interact with us? How do we move up the food chain in making sure that we are always relevant to them, and we focus on relevance rather than frequency, because frequency is easy, and that's what most retailers are going to opt for first. Relevance is hard. It requires work. It requires thinking. But I believe that it's the ones that focus on relevance at the end of the day will win.
Yeah, I love that. Justin?
Yeah, I 1000% agree with Regan. And actually, this is a great opportunity for me to touch on the question about that came in the chat about how do we manage the expectations of CRM teams constantly pushing for automation. The question is, what is the outcome? Is it relevance as opposed to frequency? Are we wanting automation just so that we can push more faster? Because like I said earlier, real time, the benefit of real time is to be able to be just in time, not so that we can communicate with immediacy every single time, to Regan's point. For me, one of the greatest hurdles facing the online space is first-party data. And I hope that our listeners here don't call that a cliche, because it is a very real challenge. We no longer have the middleman or the garden wall data, third-party data like Facebook's, Google's, what have you, to be able to collect that. What I've seen work, if I could just touch on a solution as opposed to just the problems, what I've seen work is brands sharing their first-party data. That is a short-term solution. It's actually just a patch. I understand that, but this is not a new thing. I mean, Jay Abraham has been talking about host beneficiary marketing for a very long time. So this is just brands collaborating and saying, we are in a non-competing space. We're complementary. We can't collect the first-party data that we require, and you can't collect ours. Let's share. Obviously, there's compliance and legal issues that would need to be baked into that process. But suffice to say that for me, as retailers, knowing data, both explicit data and implicit data, what people might like, what people might be interested in, what people might buy, what will bring them back, that's going to be critical.
Okay, conscious of time, we've got another question left, but I am going to let you quickly answer, you had your hand up, Regan and Shane. We just want to get to the poll at 12:45, and then we will come back to the questions. We've got some good questions there in the chat box, but Regan, take it away.
Let me just quickly have a different take on the question about, you know, CRM teams and expectations. Right? So my experience is that CRM teams and even analytics teams fear automation, and in some cases actually work against, you know, the useful implementation of automation, because they're worried that they're going to basically automate themselves out of a job. But I've been doing this for a long time. I've been implementing marketing automation for nearly 20 years, and I haven't seen a single case where the CRM or the analytics team has been downsized as a result of automation. Not a single client that we've ever implemented and ever worked on has downsized their marketing automation team. Every single one of them has increased the size and scale of it. So I think that's an important message to take to particularly analytics teams, where they, you know, they have this conflict about wanting to build these really cool automation and AI tools, but then at the same time, you know, worry about, you know, does this mean that I'm not going to be relevant anymore? And, you know, my overwhelming experience is that automation in this space does not reduce the skill level or the number of people required.
And Shane.
So I'll go back to very basics, just on the question, and then I'll loop back on this topic. But question, what's going to be the biggest challenge for online retailers over the next 12 months or so? I mean, first and foremost is, how do they comp numbers off the back of the last 2 years? How do they even forecast? How do they set targets? And then how do they build budgets around that? So that in itself is going to be a massive challenge. It was on the back end of last year, and it's just going to be further compounded off this year in Australia. Then the next one is very much on what Regan and Justin said. It's very, you know, it's, if we think about what the levers are, or traditional levers that an online retailer goes to, one without necessarily having sophisticated platforms in place, it's discounting, it's shipping offers. There's not a whole lot more to it when we go really basic level. Now, it's about retailers implementing sophisticated systems that can do the heavy lifting to do these things that we've talked about today, that the personalization, utilizing the machine learning, the AI to be relevant. But that alone, to find the right platform is a challenge, because there's a lot of noise out there. And obviously, you know, with the guys on the call today, both with the platform and obviously also being able to provide services around that and guide retailers down a path, that will assist. But I think super critical. Then the other piece is that customer expectation. So it's simple things, it's frictionless experience, whether that be a sign up or sign in. If I've signed in previously, make it easy for me when I return. And then it comes down to a statement that I've been using that's someone else, and I tried to work out where it actually came from the other day. I thought I finally found out who I'd stolen it from, that it wasn't who I thought it was. And they said, no, but I love it. And that is, a customer's last best experience is their new expectation. So if you think about that, and you do have some retailers that really are leaps and bounds ahead of others. Product is still king or queen, you know, in your product and what you have. But particularly if you're a retailer that is a house of brands, it's how do you differentiate yourself from the competition, and particularly where you've got single margin. And it really comes down to CX, and it's about nurturing those customers and providing an experience. But I think there's some of the biggest challenges, because as the guys discussed today, our inboxes are full, our social media feeds are full. We're getting SMS even from those dodgy politicians now that are unsolicited. You know, there's a lot of activity out there, but how do you differentiate yourself and be unique and tell your brand story and provide amazing CX? And I think there's a lot of pillars to it all, but really does go back to the topic today. And it's about, I think, getting your data in the right shape. It's getting that single view of customer, that single view of inventory, and providing, you know, utilizing technology to execute amazing CX.
Amazing. So just conscious of time, I think what we should do now is I'm going to put this poll up on the screen. It will only take a minute for people to answer. There's only 5 questions on there. And then we are going to come back and we are going to address the questions in the chat box, and hopefully some of your answers can also tie into our final question, which was going to be, what are some examples of real-time decisioning and how is this of benefit to retailers? But before we do that, we are going to pull up this poll. And I want to say a really big thank you to SAS and Digital Alchemy, who have so generously offered to give food vouchers out today. So they are going randomly to people who have put things up in the chat. And I believe they're also going to people who take and participate in the poll. So let me see, I've never pulled up a poll before, but there we go. Can everybody see that? Okay, so I will just click launch.
Okay, yep, you can see that as panelists.
All right, as panelists.
I'm not sure if everyone else can. Maybe if someone else
Could someone
put their hand up or
pop in the chat, but you can see that. So I think there's only 4 questions there. Yes,
yep.
Amazing. So if you could just quickly take a moment to answer this poll, and then we'll come back. There are some really great questions in the chat, and I just want to make sure we definitely get to those. And I really want to thank our panelists today. I think the discussion has been really great so far, and certainly as an online retailer myself, there's certainly some notes I've been taking here today, things that I can action and discuss with the team. So I'm sure everybody else will have some final questions as well. And I can see that we've got people are just still answering, so I'll just give it another minute or so. Really appreciate everybody's input into answering this poll today. It is about data, so obviously we do want to capture data from our participants and attendees today. So I'm going to leave it up there until about the 2-minute mark, so no pressure for those that need and not quick decision makers. And then the panelists, if you can get ready, I think what we might do is we might go back up here. There was a question here around the buying group. I think it came from Daniel, who's the group commercial manager for Leading Edge. He wanted some specific examples for data insight for buying group, and then he's elaborated on that. His buying group members consist of online and brick and mortar retailers across multiple categories: tech, white goods, jewelries and books. So I'm just going to ask one panelist to answer these. Whoever's most relevant, just pop your hand up. I can see we've got about 40% of people who have answered the poll. I don't know if I can leave this up while you keep talking, but I am going to leave it up and I'll close it off when it might just cover your face. But whoever wants to answer that question there for Daniel from Leading Edge. You've got your hand up, Shane. Are you going to answer that?
No, I meant should take it down. I've got to find the actual question. Sorry.
Okay. The question there is, do you have any specific examples for data insight for buying group operation? And then Daniel is explaining here that his buying group members consist of online brick and mortar retailers across multiple categories: tech, white goods, jewelers and books.
I'm still probably not 100% clear on what the actual business is. Is it, are they, I mean, are we talking?
Leading Edge Group. Maybe Daniel, if you're there, if you can just put some more information in and we'll come back to that question. So then we'll go on to another question. John O'Loughlin, does single view of customer extend to multiple categories? For example, do experiences with airlines and travel agent booking systems impact online retail, and how do you manage that? Again, the most relevant person, pop your hand up to answer the question.
Is the question about brands within a portfolio that you own, or is the question about industry-wide trends?
This is the one here. I don't know if you can see them in the chat from John. It just says, does single view of customer extend to multiple categories? For example, Do experiences with airlines and travel agent booking systems impact online retail, and how do you manage that? Quite a specific question.
Let me. I don't know whether I'm going to answer the question, but I'll say something. I think the first thing is, I mean, not all data is relevant to everything. So it's a mistake to think that, you know, if I get all of this data, I'm going to be able to create something that's valuable. But there are certainly within purchasing patterns. So you got to think about this from a customer, right? You got to think about this from a customer's perspective. Within a purchasing pattern, there are multiple categories that are touched. So, you know, when I'm traveling, you know, I'm buying insurance, I might be buying new clothes because, you know, I might be going to a resort, you know, so where those other retailers are relevant to, you know, to the, you know, to what the customer is trying to get done, i.e., you know, go and have a holiday, then that might be relevant, right? But you've got to, when you're putting data together, and I see this all the time where people just, you know, grab random retailers and they smash them together and think they're going to build this, you know, amazing database that's got lots of people in it. So, you know, it's very broad in terms of the number of people that it gets, but it's very thin in terms of the amount of information that it has on everybody, and very thin on the overlap. So the thing that you should draw, you know, just as an exercise to see whether this is going to work, is draw a Venn diagram about, you know, what's the overlap between all of the customer bases that you're thinking about putting together. And if there's a lot of overlap between those bases, then it's probably relevant to do. If there's very little overlap between those bases, then it's probably not.
Perfect. I'm going to go across to this question, Shane. If it's not relevant to everyone, maybe you can take it offline, but I'm not sure. It's here from RY. It says, exciting to hear about the one wish list. Can you elaborate on how the information is captured in store and subsequently how that is then surfaced online?
Yeah, definitely. I can quickly cover that. So ultimately, we've built a platform that sits in between the website and point of sale. So when you add an item to a wish list from an online perspective, ultimately that is either pushed or pulled into our core platform. So it's really the source of truth for the wish list. And then we've integrated with POS platforms. So we've got quite a few that are done now, and we're working our way through, and we'll hit a point where we'll, you know, very customer led. So we should cover, I suppose, the vast majority of the mainstream POS platforms, and same with ecom. You know, we've got a Shopify app, we've got Hybris, we're working through Magento, BigCom, Commerce Cloud, and everything else in between. So essentially, from POS perspective, there's a wish list button, and at that point, it really relies on a customer ID. So whether that's, or a customer identifier, so whether that's an email address or whether there's a loyalty program with a customer ID, customers can be looked up via a phone number. Any of those normal attributes that a customer would be looked up in POS, we hold a record or a copy of that source of truth. And if it's a new customer, they're created just as normal through our process of creating the wish list, and then items are scanned or looked up and added to the wish list at store level. But yeah, if you think of the easiest way to think about it, we've got a core platform that sits between the website and point of sale. And then we've got built-in marketing automation. And then we also are building out integrations with all the sort of key marketing automation platforms. So for retailers that have an existing platform and want to send notifications or reminders or, any of that stuff via their existing marketing automation platform, we'll push events or trigger templates in those platforms. But yeah, very happy, Rye, if you maybe just at Shane at thewishlist.io or Shane at q.cc, or just connect on LinkedIn, and I can certainly give you some more info.
Great. And final question here. I'm assuming this one will be for you, Justin. It's a question for SAS about ad hoc reporting. Asking here, I'm assuming is it easy to develop and how to maintain organization security?
Yeah, I mean, is it easy? Depends on the kind of reporting that you are looking to get and the questions that you're asking. For smaller retailers, for example, we have machine learning that bubbles up suggestions on your segments. So if you wanted to see how a certain campaign performed, it will tell you the results of your campaign and maybe your A/B tests. I'm trying not to get too technical, but at the same time, it'll also bubble up suggestions like, hey, you tested for this, but we meaning the AI, also noticed that 40-year-old males at 2 p.m. on a Thursday opened emails 20% more. You might want to look into that and test that. So it's as small as that. You can build ad hoc reporting. So for example, we have an analytical driven attribution model. That's a lot of words. Basically, which of my marketing channels in combination has resulted in greater revenue. The thing is, there are different models like last click, first click, position-based, etc. All models are wrong, but some are useful. The data-driven models tend to be better. Unfortunately, those are provided by your Googles and your Facebooks, which are typically skewed towards them. We have a model that has no skin in the game. We don't sell media inventory. So it's a model that you use, and our customers build upon that model using various levels of complexity, like game theory, for example. So can the ad hoc reporting be done? Yes, absolutely. We have certain things that are out of the box. Can it be more complex according to your team? Then yes, of course, we have a pedigree in customizing that kind of thing. So the short answer is it's as complex or as simple as you want it to be.
Brilliant. And this will be our final closing question for today. What are some examples of real-time decisioning, and how is this of benefit to retailers? And I'll just ask two of our panelists, the first two, to put their hands up to answer that. And then I'd just like to make sure that I have time to thank everybody for joining today.
Um,
All right, I think you were first, Joel.
Yeah, just really kind of quick. So loyal customer engagement is super important, right? But how would you do that, right? So omnichannel, right? Hey, you kind of throw out the campaign, and then you acquire some customers, right? Those customers kind of sign up for the loyalty program, and then they come to the store, and then they just kind of walk around, right? And then since their data tied with the smartphone, and then that has kind of device ID, so still like a sensor and CVs, camera, they can kind of sense where you are, and depending on where you are, and then you have like shelf signage, smart shelf that has kind of small signage that knows who you are, and then what you'll be interested in, and then the closer you get to that smart shelf, and then you get like specific product information kind of pops up, and then you get closer, and then you get a price, and then you get some customer review, and then what happened after that, and that brand actually got 87% sales lift after that campaign. I mean, I was to the smart shelf deployment. So the loyal customer engagement is super important. You can't do that just only online or offline. You gotta have proper omnichannel strategy behind the scenes.
Thank you. And Justin, just in closing.
Yeah, so we have seen an example of a retailer, our own customer in the United States, use real-time decisioning on credit loans in the checkout. So as you're checking out, you put in your details, log in, and it matches it with banking data. And in that moment, it'll say how much you can actually borrow on credit to be able to complete your checkout. So if you wanted to. So in other words, the retailer has become their own buy now, pay later solution. So that's an example of real-time decisioning, which has a lot of fraud detection and analytics in the background that happens in real time for the user at checkout. Now, two things come out of that. How is it beneficial to a retailer? Well, in this particular case, it's lowering the amount of abandonment and increasing cart size. The second is what users can see this data, and this actually taps back to one of the previous questions. You can set the level of access that people can access and see within the software. So I hope that answers that question.
Perfect. And it has come to 1 o'clock. I would like to say, first and foremost, on behalf of Nora, I'd really like to thank today's panelists, Shane, Justin, Chiol, and Regan. I think this was a really interesting and engaging discussion, and I know that our panelists will have got a lot out of today. Thank you so much. I think we had 50% of the people fill in the poll, and I mentioned it before, but I'd just like to thank SAS and Digital Alchemy again for providing those food vouchers that will be coming out to everyone. And the people that asked the questions today, you'll be contacted, I assume, by Nora to work out if you won the food voucher. On behalf of Nora, thank you everybody for attending today, and make sure you keep an eye out for future Nora RetailUP events. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.